Hello, everyone, and welcome to my section in this emotional intelligence based summit. My name is Joe Johnston, and I'll be presenting today on the secrets of emotionally resilient individuals. Just to preface things, I'm not sure where everyone is in the country or how everything's going for them right now. It is actually March 17th at the time of this recording. And I am up in Massachusetts, Boston, Massachusetts. And right now, I guess timely to the presentation, there is a pretty big crisis going on with the coronavirus going around. So I know this summit will be coming out about a month from now, a little over a month from now. So hopefully, at the time that you guys are all seeing this, everything has calmed down. I hope you all are safe. I hope your loved ones are safe, family, friends, and everything like that. Everything's going right, and we've gotten through this coronavirus. I'm sure we will, as we've gotten through many crises in the past. But having said that, I think more than anything, this presentation on emotional resilience and what I believe are the secrets of emotionally resilient individuals is really timely and really an important subject, not only to be talking about now, obviously, in the wake of the coronavirus, but just in general. Emotional well being is and mental well being, sort of tied in, which we'll discuss today, are really two topics that I'm personally passionate about, which I'll get to in a little bit. But emotional well-being, emotional health, and mental health is an aspect of our health, is an aspect of us as individuals, and an aspect of our well-being that we don't think about too much, right? When we think about health, I think we think about physical health or spiritual health or sexual health even, but really to think about how important emotional well-being is, how important mental well-being is to our overall satisfaction as individuals, right? As human beings, besides a select few of the population and maybe clinically diagnosable psychopaths, most of us have emotions. Very few human beings don't have emotions or experience emotions similar to one another, which we'll discuss in a little bit. But today's presentation is all going to be about emotional resiliency. I come personally from somewhat of a clinical background. So my background, I have a bachelor's degree in psychology. My senior year, I actually went into my senior year of undergraduate studies at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst as a declared business major. I was a psychology minor and always had a keen interest in psychology, a keen interest in human beings and learning someone's story. And it was the first class I took my senior year of college at UMass Amherst, and it was abnormal psychology class. And anyone who's taken an abnormal psychology course before, or who's learned anything about clinical diagnoses or abnormal psychology sort of knows it's fascinating. It's truly fascinating, and it really hit home with me. It struck a chord with me as an individual, and I actually went in after that class and about a week of continued business classes and said, you know what, I'm going to change my major and I'm going to go all in. I'm going to take all these psych classes my senior year. I'm going to finish. And I ended up graduating with a psychology degree. And I went to work in the field of mental health. That's what I thought I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to become a clinical psychologist and go down that route. So I started working in the field of mental health. I worked at McLean Hospital in Belmont, Massachusetts, a really infamous psychiatry hospital with severely ill individuals who are coming in bipolar and schizophrenic, the psychotic disorders unit as they called it. I worked there for a couple months. I then went on to work a job in the community mental health field. So I did some work going out directly to individuals' houses and clients' houses in the greater Boston area to check in on them and to get their needs, help them get jobs, and help them get back on their feet again. So I've spent some time, in the psychology field, in the mental health world, and in addition to that, personal experiences, those of family and loved ones that I've observed, as well as just countless reading and countless knowledge. Not so much now as I used to do, but really educating myself on different clinical diagnoses and psychological disorders. So the focus, I believe, of our talk today and of our time together and of this session is when it relates to emotional intelligence. A big part of emotional intelligence is emotional awareness and actually knowing what some common emotional states look like. And again, since I come from some of a clinical and abnormal background, what some common, I guess you could call them negative emotional experiences look like. So, for example, we're going to be taking a really in depth look today, or we're going to be taking sort of a broad look, I suppose, at anxiety as well as depression. So, we're going to be talking about those two topics, and then we're going to really dig deep into emotional trauma, what it means to be emotionally stunted as an individual, some things that some events that can cause emotional stunting, why it's so important that we heal from our pasts, and to the best of our ability we heal from the mental and emotional traumas that we've experienced as individuals. And then we're going to end and we'll talk about some more positive emotions. We'll talk a little bit about happiness and take an in-depth look at love and what that's meant to me in my past, and some stories that I have to share there. But really, more than anything, what I want to offer you guys in this session is tools, emotional awareness tools, emotional understanding tools, as well as emotional healing tools, emotional and mental healing tools, as well as emotional and mental upkeep tools, right? Emotional well-being, just like physical well-being or social well-being or sexual well-being, whatever it is, it's not a one-time event. We can't go to one therapy session and then everything's good and we're all healed and we're good to go. We need tools to continue to upkeep our emotional well-being. We need to continue to focus on our emotional well-being and put an effort and work towards becoming the emotionally resilient individuals that we all have the capability to be. So I'm really excited for this session. I think more than anything, one of the reasons why I want to share this is because it's so important that we're able to identify our emotions in life. It's so important that we open up this conversation now around some of these negative emotional experiences and these different emotional conditions and just feeling states that we'll have, so that going forward in our lives we can be more aware, we can be more intelligent on not only the emotions within ourselves and not only our own emotional well-being, but more importantly the emotions within others, and the emotional experience that we can see and we can understand when we're dealing with individuals in the external world. So I'm really excited. What we're going to do is there will be sort of three parts. So this is sort of the introduction. We'll get into the main content, which will be the meat of the presentation, coming up next, and then after that we'll get into the conclusion session and really wrap things up. So this will be in three different parts. We'll do some transitions here from the introduction to the content to the conclusion. But I really look forward to spending this time with you guys and talking a little bit about emotions and emotional well-being and emotional resilience. All right, my friends, let's hop into the meat of this presentation. Before we jump into things, I really think it's important that we define emotions, right? What does that word mean, emotions? There's this whole summit, there's this whole presentation. You guys are going to be seeing presentation after presentation today related to emotional intelligence. What does that word mean, emotions? Emotions is defined as an instinctive or intuitive feeling, as distinguished from reasoning or knowledge. And when you break the word down, emotion, what you're really left with is energy in motion. That's truly on some basic level all emotions are. It's just energy in motion, whether it's energy in motion towards a negative state, towards a positive state, or towards a neutral state. It's all emotions really can be broken down to is just energy in motion. Now, we all experience emotions slightly differently, and contrary to common belief, there's no one fingerprint for different emotional states, right? So, what is anger to one person might be frustration to another person, and on the other side might be complete rage to another individual. So, excuse me, we all experience emotions slightly differently. But with that being said, emotions dictate nearly every single one of our everyday actions and decisions. Whether we realize it consciously or unconsciously, emotions dictate and tell us when to eat, when to sleep, when to speak, when to fight, and when to flight. We don't necessarily buy or do certain things so much as we buy or seek particular feeling states or the emotional responses that we hope certain decisions are going to bring to us, right? Emotions are the main driving force in why we go out to lunch with friends, why we go on dates or place so much importance as society and as individuals on finding true love, and why we say plan Thursday and Friday night happy hours with friends after and friends and coworkers after a long and stressful week. Whether we realize it or not, we are constantly as human beings running and seeking positive emotional states, and more importantly, running away from negative emotional experiences. And yet, despite their major significance to everyday life and existence, we as a society never talk about emotions. Fortunately, today, with the next 25 to 30 minutes together, we're going to strive to change all of that. So today we're going to look at three of the most commonly felt emotional states today. We'll go on to discuss what it means to be emotionally stunted and how we can overcome that emotional stunting. And we'll ultimately leave here today, the goal is to leave here today as the emotionally prosperous, wealthy, resilient, badass individuals and adults that we all have the capability to be. So let's jump in, my friends. Here we go. Today and every day going forward, let's open up a conversation around emotional well-being and emotional health. So let's jump in. Now, the concept of common humanity, excuse me, the concept of common humanity recognizes that suffering, feelings of personal inadequacy in life, is part of the shared human experience. So, in other words, suffering, feelings of hurt, feelings of pain in life, isn't something that one of us experiences or feels in solitude, but rather is part of the shared human experience. It's something that we all have to kind of sign up for when we're blessed with the gift of life. Now, one of the most common emotions of suffering today is what is known as anxiety, or a persistent feeling of worry, nervousness, or unease, which is typically related to an imminent event or something with an uncertain outcome. Now, if I was around and I was in a crowd right now, I'd ask to see how many people in here today, by a show of hands, have ever experienced anxiety in their lives. So I'll ask that question now and raise your hands, I guess, if you're just sitting at your computer. But, usually when I do this in a room of individuals, is most of the room will raise their hands. Most of us know anxiety, most of us have experienced anxiety in our lives and know what that looks like. And that's not surprising to me because anxiety disorders are the single most common form of mental illness in the United States today. Number one leading mental illness in the United States today. Now, I used to go to, there's a Barnes & Noble down the street from this place that I used to work. Big Barnes & Noble, this big superstore, 2 stories high. Beautiful. And I'd go there to work on my business and my professional speaking business after work and at lunchtime. And about this past December, around Christmas time, there's an individual that got hired at the Barnes & Noble. And I saw him, I was around there a lot, so I would see him a lot. I'd see him walking around the store. And this kid, we'll call him Brandon for the sake of the story. I don't really know what his name was, but we'll call him Brandon. Brandon was so deathly shy. Deathly shy, it seemed to me. He'd be walking around, his head would be down, his head would be in a phone. If he was interacting with customers or fellow coworkers, he could barely even make eye contact. And for a while, I was wondering, I was like, God, just go say something to him, Joe. Go introduce yourself, make him feel a little more welcome. And I regret that I never did. But I realized over time, I realized to myself, Brandon's probably not shy. Brandon very likely could be suffering from what we know as social anxiety. He might truly have a clinical diagnosis or disorder that's holding him back from reaching his true potential socially. So I think more than anything, what this story should illuminate to us is just the fact that we never know what someone's going through. Sometimes we'll see someone and they'll ignore us or something will happen and we'll think, oh my God, what a jerk, right? What a terrible person. Why wouldn't they come up and say that to me, or why would that person do that? But sometimes we just have to remember people could be suffering from, clinically diagnosable disorders. People could be suffering from mental and emotional ails that we can't necessarily see on the surface. Now, with all that being said, my junior year of college at UMass, I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to go see a therapist. And I was working through my anxiety and my nervousness and troubles with this therapist. And he gave me some really great advice. He said, Joe, at times when you're feeling these, feelings of unease, these feelings of nervousness and worry, anxiety, he would never call it anxiety, but that's what he was referring to. He said, Joe, in times when you feel this, try and question why that is. What's inciting that sort of fight or flight response with you? Is it the place that you are? Is it the activities that you're doing, the people that you're spending time with? And he really, at the time I didn't understand it, but it's such a valuable tool when it comes to our own mental and emotional well-being to really assess, where is that coming from? Where are these feelings coming from? Why are these feelings coming on, say, when I go and hang out with this particular individual or when I do this specific activity? So personally diagnosing our anxieties, our negative feeling states, as well as our joyous feeling states is truly, truly really important and a really great strategy that I've carried with me today as I go forward in my life. Now, closely linked to anxiety, often working in tandem with it, is what we know to be depression, or a persistent feeling of sadness or loss of interest. Now, I don't want to spend too much time here in this metaphorically dark place talking about depression, but true clinical and situational depression is it's an ugly beast. It really is, and often kind of inexplicable to both the individual who's suffering as well as those surrounding the individual and those surrounding the loved ones of the individual who's suffering. That dark cloud of depression that can sort of fall over us, sort of fall over any of us, is something that, personally I wouldn't wish upon my worst enemy. Again, it's just that inexplicable. People around you will want to be, snap out of it. Just be happy. Why are you so sad? Just snap out of it. And it's just an inexplicable, really tough disorder to overcome. Now, with that being said, from my own personal past experiences with depression, as well as those of family members and close friends, I've noticed that depression's sort of one of those self perpetuating negative emotional states, right? Often, once one person diagnoses us, once one person says, oh, you're depressed, you have depression, that D word, that awful, ugly D word of depression, can sort of become a part of our identities. We may kind of find ourselves stuck in this sort of negative, woe is me emotional state, almost basking in and taking comfort in our pain, taking comfort in our own misery. It's a really strange thing, but it's something I've noticed in a lot of people where sort of taking comfort in this pain, taking comfort in this discomfort that they have. Now, on that note, while often quite debilitating depression that can be, situational or temporary depressions in life can also often be the greatest catalysts for major life changes, right? I mean, the times in my life when I've been the lowest, times in my life when I've experienced situational or temporary depression, whether it be through the loss of a relationship or the death of a loved one, has generally always been followed up by major life changes, right? If I get to the point in my life where things are so bad, things are so ugly that, I've hit rock bottom, there's only one way to go, and that's up, right? So that pain that we experience through depression can often be great catalysts for major life changes. Now, on a lighter note here, happiness is one of the most highly sought after yet elusive of human emotions. Dr. Richard Halgin, who was my professor in that abnormal psychology course I mentioned in my introduction, he offered me one of the greatest definitions of happiness when he said to me, Joe, it's funny. I don't think of the opposite of depression as, quote, happiness, so much as I do contentment. I said, are you content going through your life day to day with your job and your relationships and so on and so forth? And then there are these moments occasionally of almost emotional elation. Now, it's funny when you think about it, this country, if you guys are listening from the United States, the United States was founded on the creed of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Notice that key word, pursuit, right? Because life and liberty are a given in this country of the United States. But happiness remains a pursuit, a never-ending hunt and pursuit for one of the most glorious yet elusive of human emotions. Now, there is another fairly common emotional state that I want to talk about and really dig into deep here, and something that I've certainly had an interest in for a very long time in my personal life, and that is the experiencing of psychological trauma. We all have pasts, and unfortunately, for many of us, sometimes those pasts can be quite painful and hurtful. In the words of the great country singer Joe Nichols, we all carry something. Now, one of the major symptoms of psychological trauma is that it often traps us as individuals in the area of our lives which the trauma has occurred. Many past trauma survivors and post traumatic stress disorder afflicted individuals would describe things as the past is always present. See, what happens, my friend, is our brains are hardwired to keep us alive. Amongst many of their other functions, one of the most basic functions of our brains is to keep us alive as individuals. So what happens is, and especially at a young age, is when our brains sense danger in our environment. They sense that our lives might be in danger or in fear. What happens is our brains will clench up defensively. They'll clench up to protect us, to prepare us to either fight or flight. And what happens where the issue occurs is that often after the traumatic event has passed, after that life threatening event has passed and gone on, our brains will remain clenched. And they won't they won't consciously unclench themselves, and that'll leave us in sort of a constant state of vigilance, alert to every sign of danger in around us in our environment, and sometimes even imagining danger where there isn't any. Now, if we never take the time to kind of unclench our brains and bring them back to normal and where they need to be, they may continue to rob us. Sort of this self sabotage, continue to rob us of our personal freedoms and potentials in life. In the words of the late great psychoanalyst Carl Jung, until you make the unconscious conscious, it'll direct your life and you will call it fate. Again, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Now, this type of work that we're going to discuss here, healing from psychological trauma, this type of deep mental and emotional work that we're going to focus sort of the next 15 minutes of our time together. This is not stuff to be taken lightly. It isn't. And the work that we're talking about embarking on really takes true courage to sort of sit, consciously, presently sit with ourselves, sit with our brains, the good, the bad, the ugly, sit with our memories and work through them is a difficult, long, often uncomfortable, sometimes never ending process, yet an extremely vital and necessary evil in the pursuit of personal happiness and contentment in our lives. I want us all to think about this for a little bit while I finish my tea here. How would your life be different if I could wave a magic wand over all of us, release us from our deepest mental and emotional wounds? What would that look like? Truly think about the fact, how would your life be different in this moment right here? Sitting at your computers, at your desk, maybe you'd be more calm, maybe you'd be more content, maybe you'd be more satisfied with where you are, maybe you'd be living more in your present moment. But how would your life be different if you could suddenly sort of break free from your pasts? If you could suddenly be healed, fully healed of all your deepest mental and emotional wounds? What would that look like? Take a second just to reflect while I take a sip of water. Well, here's the thing, my friends. I have good news and I have bad news. The bad news is, as you might have guessed, unfortunately, I don't have that sort of a magic wand. Unfortunately, I'm not some type of voodoo healer, and I'm not Tony Robbins, as much as I'd like to think that I would be, and one day I can be. Fortunately, though, then on the good side, we live in an age of unprecedented technological change, and we have access to countless effective emotional and mental treatment methods that can help us to achieve the above mentioned scenarios. With some work, some intention on our parts, we put in some time, our lives can truly begin to vastly improve mentally and emotionally. through the implementation of one or more of the following 5 treatment methods that I want to discuss. Now, the first treatment method in the first step towards really, I guess, healing ourselves from our pasts is just simple self realization. The simple realization that deep mental and emotional pain is present, it's there, it's in our lives, and it needs attendance to is often the first step towards a healthy recovery, right? In the words of the great former NFL linebacker Ray Lewis, the only way to defeat pain is to recognize the pain exists. Again, the only way to defeat pain is to recognize that pain exists. So we have to be able to say, hey, there's something wrong here. Hey, there's something going on here, and I need to attend to it, and I need to put in some work to heal myself. Secondly, building off of that, my personal favorite treatment method, individual psychotherapy or traditional talk therapy, can often be an extremely effective and cathartic emotional release for many. Usually, if I'm doing a presentation here in the Boston area to a Boston crowd, I'll ask the audience, who here has seen the movie Good Will Hunting? I don't know if any of you have seen that really powerful, great movie, Good Will Hunting, one of Matt Damon's early great pieces, and Robin Williams was in it, acted as the therapist. But Good Will Hunting is a truly, truly excellent example of effective talk therapy and the benefits that it can have for an individual in need in action. For many of us with tough and difficult pasts, and even for those of us who had really, pretty great pasts and are just trying to understand them, that's exactly what therapy can offer us. Therapy can sort of help us work through in a safe environment, work through our pasts, work through the narratives that we've been telling ourselves for far too long, and really sort of rewire and reframe the stories and the narratives that we've been telling ourselves. And I know for myself personally, one of the greatest benefits that I got from therapy was this ability to sort of become and be my own therapist, right? I mean, today, now I understand, not only what it is that I need emotionally and mentally, but more importantly, when it is that I need those things for myself mentally and emotionally. Putting pen to paper and other creative methods is our third sort of healing strategy, right? I mean, many of the world's most famous creative artists, actors, creative individuals began their pursuits at a young age, often as escapes from troubled home lives, right? I mean, I can speak to the fact personally that, creating something, whether it's a business and the business that I'm creating right now and building, or a speech, the speech that I've created and that I'm presenting to you guys now, creating something where there was nothing before is a deeply, deeply satisfying feeling that sort of mysteriously can heal our deepest mental and emotional wounds. Finally, second to finally, deep and restorative REM sleep. So good sleep. I got a good night's sleep last night. I'm feeling good today, feeling solid. But sleep is so important, and most importantly, deep and restorative REM sleep, which is when we do all our dreaming, is truly crucially important, not only to rewiring old hurtful memories, but also to reinstilling and really encoding new, more joyful memories. And finally, I want to draw on a deeply personal story to illustrate this last fifth, really mysterious yet beautiful treatment method that there is. Just about 2 years ago now to the date, I'm pretty sure this was the time, senior year. So 2 years ago now to the date, it was my senior year of undergraduate studies at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. And my two college best friends and I decided that we were going to take a road trip down to Daytona Beach, Florida. So we got in my car that I actually have parked outside. I still have the car today. Toyota Camry, my black 2002 Toyota Camry. We got in my car and we road tripped down 18 and a half hours to Daytona Beach, Florida. Our kind of final spring break, last senior year sort of hoorah, goodbye tour from college in our undergraduate years. And while on that trip, I was fortunate enough to meet a really beautiful, amazing young lady. Spent a couple nights together, and I came back up to UMass eventually. We drove back up the 18.5 hours. But since that night, we had stayed in touch. When I came back, stayed in touch over text and calling occasionally. And I even eventually went down to visit her again at her college in Florida. And we drifted apart over time, as most long distance relationships do. But unfortunately, things didn't work out. But my time spent with Melanie, my time spent with this girl, taught me a priceless lesson of one of the most powerful and mysterious healing drugs of all, and that is love. You see, my friends, even when I came down off that high of spring break, even when I was back home, surrounded by family, friends, loved ones, beautiful women all around me, I could not seem to get my mind off this girl that lived over 1,000 miles away. Like an alcoholic is to the bottle, I was drawn to her. I couldn't not go down there and see her again. I had something in me told me I had to keep speaking with her. I had to just see where things go. And even to this day, right, nearly just about 2 years ago, I want to say, since our initial meeting, I'll be going through my day. Something will happen. I'll hear someone speaking in Spanish. Something will happen. And it doesn't take much. And I'll think back on that. I'll think back on my time spent with Melanie and kind of pondering what it all meant to me. And I've run through all the what if and maybe scenarios 100 times in my head, wondering, if I'll ever get the chance to see this girl again, or if I'll ever meet someone that great and fall like that for someone again. And, sometimes when I reflect on these things, it makes me sad, right? I mean, I've cried those deep, soulful tears sometimes over losing this girl. And most times, though, most times when I reflect on my time with Melanie and the short time we got to spend together, most times I smile. Most times I laugh, and just grateful at the opportunity that I got, the time that we got to share together, right? Learning about each other, learning about her and her beautiful culture and the way that she lives her life and how it's different than me, and just growing in the depths of sort of true love. And I think, if anything, my time spent with Melanie, what it made me realize is that true love, like trauma, cuts deeper than ordinary emotional experiences. True love, like trauma, cuts to our being, cuts to our souls, it cuts to, the core of who we are as individuals. I had a high school senior year, I had a high school science teacher who gave us sort of a farewell speech, and he said to us, my friends, the greatest thing in life is love. And to this day, I haven't been able to disprove that statement. Truly, the greatest thing, the greatest emotion in this life is love. And, we need more of it. We need more love in every aspect of our lives. We need more of it in our personal lives, in our professional lives, and just in the world as a whole. And the good thing with love is that, you don't have to be in some crazy, intimate, long distance relationship to express or feel love. But we can express love and kindness every single day of our lives through simple things, right? Simple just acts of kindness and saying hello to someone or asking someone how their days are. I mean, we can spread this powerful emotion of love every single day of our lives. So to recap, we've discussed 5 main emotional healing techniques, right? We talked about self-realization. We talked about, psychotherapy. We talked about creative outlets, deep REM sleep, and we just discussed love. And with that being said, it's so important that we understand, as we talked about at the beginning of this, presentation, that emotional healing and care is not something that's ever fully complete. It's not a binary yes or no sort of a system, but you know, emotional well-being is something we need to upkeep every single day of our lives. So I want to end, before we conclude here, I want to end with 5 tools we can use, we can take forward in our lives to upkeep our emotional well-being on a daily basis. The first tool I want to discuss centers around really changing our mindsets. Truly, I mean, as a society and as individuals, I think we need to change our mindsets and what we're putting priority on, what we're putting value to in our lives. Instead of, putting importance and value on productivity and money and, you know, job titles and that stuff. We should be prioritizing the little things in life. Friends, loved ones, family, you know, how we're feeling, how we're doing, if we're happy. So, really changing our mindsets is something we can all practice on a daily basis. Secondly, physical exercise. Physical exercise is so important, has a direct correlation to our emotions and our emotional well being, right? All emotions are is energy in motion. So, as often as possible, if we can get out and about and, you know, just get ourselves in motion, get out of our heads and get more into our bodies than we are our heads and our feeling states, we're going to start feeling a lot better. And the good thing about working out and getting physical and getting active is that often the harder we work, the better we're going to feel about ourselves. So the more work that we put in, if I work out for, say, an hour, I'm going to feel better than I just worked out for 15 minutes. Number three, healthy social networks. Controlling who we spend the majority of our social lives with is really a major contributing factor to our emotional lives and our emotional well-being. Seeking other individuals that push and challenge us to improve ourselves and work on ourselves, as opposed to those who kind of undermine us or drain the energy out of us, is so important. So social networks is huge. Self-love is massive. Self-love and personal discovery, you know, understanding that love really is self-love. Because what happens when we don't love ourselves, we turn to the external world. We turn to the external world to look for those things, look for other people, external sources to really feed and to fill the gaps that we have in ourselves. But that never works. So understanding ourselves, you know, understanding our emotions, our mental well-being, what makes us tick, what makes us feel a certain way, what's a good thing, what's a bad thing for us, is going to be crucially important to our overall emotional well-being. And then the last thing is, you know, dream big, my friends. Dream big and pursue your dreams at all costs. It's so important, and I realize this now. You know, I was working a job a couple months ago that would just suck the life out of me. And I wasn't passionate about it. I was only there for the money. I was only there to, you know, save money so that eventually I could do what I'm doing now, which is, you know, pursue my dreams of becoming a professional speaker, of doing good work and spreading a message and a cause that I care about, like I am right now. So it's so important, my friends, that, you know, you find something you're passionate about, you find something professionally and personally that you can pursue, that you enjoy and that you believe in, because pursuing a dream is so fun, where you're going towards the dream and you hit one goal or you hit one milestone and you celebrate it, you get excited, and then you get back to work and you go for another one. It's mentally, emotionally invigorating. It keeps us healthy, and pursuing our dreams is so important. You only get one life, you only get to live it once, so pursue your dreams at all costs. All right, guys, thank you so much for bearing with us here. We are at the end of this presentation. I just want to say, you know, obviously you guys can tell, I'm probably can tell through the screen, I'm pretty passionate about the work that I do here, spreading knowledge around emotions, emotional well-being. I have a couple other programs that I run within my business, M.I.I. Professional Speaking. Definitely keep in touch. Shoot us an email at MII professional speaking at gmail.com. Again, that's MII professional speaking at gmail.com. We'll have all of this at the end as well. Check out our website, mii-ps.com, for more information. And I'd love to get in touch with you and hear more about potential needs, and where I could continue to provide value for you, your team, your individuals that you work with down the line here. So really appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to this presentation. And I want to end our time together here with this. You know, one of the main tenets that was derived out of Charles Darwin's survival of the fittest theory was this. You know, Darwin believed that it's not the strongest of the species that survives. It's not the most intellectual of the species that survives. But the species that survives is that which is best able to adapt and adjust to the ever changing environment in which it finds itself. So, as we leave here today, I really want to implore all of you that you take the time necessary to cleanse yourselves emotionally. Release whatever emotional baggage it is that you may have been carrying around, it might have been carrying around for far too long. In the words of the great Tony Robbins, heal the boy and the man will appear. Again, heal the boy and the man will appear. Let us each take the time to really take care of and attend to our emotional health, our emotional wellness, just as we would any other aspect of our being, health, or wellness as individuals. To the best of our ability, let us each strive to avoid the depths of depression, reduce our experiences with anxiety as we heal ourselves from our emotional traumas and fill our lives with as much love as humanly possible in pursuit of our own unique versions of happiness in this life. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen today, and I look forward to any questions you might have and answering those going forward. Thank you.